Officials in Tijuana, Mexico want to know why a pro wrestler died after a match against a former WWE star. Pedro Aguayo Ramirez was a Mexican wrestling star. He broke his neck during that bout on Friday night.
While wrestling might look like fun and games for a lot of people, the truth is that sometimes those fun and games have deadly consequences.
Canadian Owen Hart, known as the Blue Blazer, was killed performing a pre-match stunt.
Vince McMahon had dropped Shane McMahon from the ceiling. And he splatted on the mat. I don't think he would have scraped him off the mat and sent the next match out.
There are also instances where the violence did not happen on stage, but off it, in their own homes.
WWE superstar Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel are dead.
Authorities in Fayetteville, Georgia have confirmed that the deaths of pro wrestler Chris Benoit and his family were a result of a double murder-suicide.
The truth is, while we adore our superstars, there are so many inexcusable things they do, including killing people. Here are some wrestlers we know have killed people for sure. Chris Benoit.
My name is Dennis Fagan. I run the security for World Wrestling, and one of our wrestlers that lives down there is missing.
Okay, what's his name?
Chris Benoit.
In June 2007, the world of professional wrestling was rocked to its core by a chilling and heart-wrenching tragedy. Chris Benoit, a revered figure in WWE, became the center of a narrative so dark and inconceivable that it left fans and fellow wrestlers in disbelief. Over a harrowing weekend, the Benoit household in Fayetteville became the scene of an unthinkable act, as Chris Benoit took the lives of his wife Nancy and their 7-year-old son Daniel, before ending his own life in a manner that stunned the community and the world. The Fayetteville police, responding to the welfare check requested by WWE, entered the Benoit residence on the afternoon of Monday, June 25, 2007. Inside, they found a scene that was both tragic and perplexing. Nancy Benoit's body was discovered in the upstairs family room, her feet and wrists bound, and a towel wrapped around her neck. The evidence suggested she had been strangled. In another part of the house, the body of 7-year-old Daniel was found in his bed, showing no external signs of trauma, but later determined to have been suffocated. Chris Benoit's body was located in the home gym, hanging from the steel cord of a weight machine, indicating suicide by hanging. District Attorney Scott Ballard and the county sheriff reported that Benoit had used the cord from the weight machine to create a noose, releasing the weights to cause strangulation. Initially, no suicide note was found at the scene. However, in a subsequent and heartrending twist, a Bible among Benoit's possessions sent to his family in Canada revealed a handwritten message from Benoit stating, "I'm preparing to leave this earth." This discovery provided a somber and personal glimpse into Benoit's final thoughts. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, the WWE aired a tribute to Chris Benoit during what would have been the broadcast of WWE Raw on the evening of Monday, June 25, 2007. This tribute included matches and segments highlighting Benoit's wrestling career. However, as details of the murder-suicide emerged, WWE retracted the tribute, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and distancing the organization from Benoit. Rey Mysterio.
Officials in Tijuana, Mexico want to know why a pro wrestler died after a match against a former WWE star.
The night of March 20th, 2015 was set to be another chapter in Aguayo Jr.'s storied career. The Crash promotion in Tijuana was the battleground, and the match was a tag team spectacle. Aguayo Jr., teaming with Monique, was pitted against two formidable opponents, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Extreme Tiger. Fans expected a classic, a clash of titans under the vibrant lights, a showcase of the artistry and athleticism that defined lucha libre. But as the combatants prepared for battle, none could foresee that this night would be etched in history not for the feats performed within the ring, but for a tragedy that would leave the wrestling world mourning. Perro Aguayo Jr., with his trademark snarl and intensity, stepped into the ring alongside Monique, ready to face the legendary Rey Mysterio Jr. and his partner Extreme Tiger. The crowd roared, a cacophony of excitement for the high-stakes drama that is lucha libre. The bell rang, and the dance of agility and power commenced. The choreography of the fight led to a pivotal moment, one that would be replayed in the minds of fans and analysts in the days to come. Rey Mysterio Jr., a master of the ring, executed a head scissors takedown on Aguayo Jr., a move designed to set up his signature 619, but fate intervened, and Aguayo Jr. did not land as expected. Instead, he found himself outside the ring, a rare misstep for the seasoned luchador. Undeterred, Aguayo Jr. returned to the fray, only to receive a dropkick from Mysterio, aimed at positioning him for the 619. Aguayo Jr. slumped over the middle rope, the setup complete, but his body was limp, his response unnervingly absent. Manick, sensing something amiss, shook Aguayo Jr., trying to elicit a reaction. Conan at ringside joined the effort, shaking Aguayo Jr. with growing concern. The match continued around them, the performers unaware of the severity unfolding before their eyes. Mysterio, ever the professional, avoided contact as he leaped for the 619, his instincts telling him something was wrong. The referee's attention was finally drawn to Aguayo Jr.'s condition, and the match drew to a close with Mysterio pinning Manick, but the victory was hollow, overshadowed by the worry for Aguayo Jr. As the reality of the situation set in, the ring became a scene of urgency. Personnel rushed to Aguayo Jr.'s side, initially believing he was simply knocked out. He was carefully moved from the ring on a makeshift stretcher of plywood, a decision that would later be scrutinized, though it was made in the heat of the moment with the best intentions. Perro Aguayo Jr., at the age of 35, had passed away. The aftermath was a blur of emotion and confusion. The initial diagnosis pointed to cervical spine trauma, a result of the drop kick that sent Aguayo Jr. into the ropes. The final cause of death, however, was a cardiac arrest due to a cervical stroke caused by 3 fractured vertebrae. The fractures occurred at 2 distinct moments of impact, and Aguayo Jr. had died almost instantly, a fact that offered little solace to those who revered him. The Attorney General for Baja California initiated an investigation to unravel the events that led to Aguayo Jr.'s death. The wrestling community held its breath, awaiting answers, hoping for closure. No criminal charges were filed, but the incident cast a spotlight on the medical protocols in place at wrestling events. The Tijuana Wrestling Commission faced scrutiny as it was revealed that the doctor on duty was attending to other injuries backstage, delaying the response to Aguayo Jr.'s critical condition. As the investigation unfolded, the wrestling fraternity came together to mourn one of their own. Aguayo Jr.'s funeral, held on March 23rd in Guadalajara, was a poignant affair. Conan and Rey Mysterio Jr., 2 titans of the ring and close to Aguayo Jr., served as pallbearers. In a gesture of deep respect and mourning, Mysterio attended without his mask, a rare sight that underscored the gravity of the loss. He faced Aguayo Jr.'s family, not as a fellow wrestler, but as a man sharing in their grief. They in turn offered words of comfort, absolving him of any blame and attributing the tragedy to a higher power. Snuka. Nancy Argentino, a vivacious 23-year-old from Brooklyn, New York, found herself entwined in the glamorous yet grueling world of professional wrestling, not as a competitor, but as the companion of one of the sport's most electrifying figures, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Argentino then became a constant presence in Snuka's life, traveling with him through the highs and lows of his wrestling tours, especially when he performed in the Northeast. Their bond, though fraught with the challenges of a life lived in the limelight, seemed unshakable until one fateful day in May of 1983. On that day, the couple checked into the George Washington Motor Lodge in Whitehall Township, Pennsylvania, not far from the Allentown Fairgrounds, where Snuka was scheduled for a World Wrestling Federation taping. Little did anyone know, this would be the last motel room Argentino would ever see. Within hours, a frantic call for help was made, and Nancy was rushed to the hospital with a serious head injury, her life hanging in the balance. The sudden death of Nancy Argentino sent shockwaves through the community and prompted an immediate investigation by local authorities. As the last person to see her alive, Jimmy Snuka's account of the events became the focal point of the inquiry. Initially, Snuka told at least 5 individuals, including the first police officer on the scene, that an altercation had occurred, resulting in Nancy falling and striking her head. However, his story would soon change, with Snuka claiming that Nancy had slipped and hit her head during a roadside bathroom stop. He defended this accountant as recently as 2013.
So the girl, wanted to use the bathroom, So she got out and went to go use the bathroom, pulled over to the side. And I guess after she got done, she came back over like a stream that was there. She jumped and slipped and banged her head.
Nancy had suffered traumatic brain injuries consistent with a moving head striking a stationary object, along with over 24 cuts and bruises across her body. The coroner's report suggested a case of maid abuse and urged that the death should be investigated as a homicide. Despite the alarming autopsy results and Snuka's shifting explanations, charges were not immediately filed. The case remained open, yet inactive, as the wrestling world continued to spin and Snuka maintained his celebrity status within it. In the days following Nancy's death, Snuka appeared at wrestling events, seemingly unaffected by the tragedy that had unfolded. Behind the scenes, however, the gears of justice were grinding slowly, with Nancy's family seeking answers and pushing for a deeper investigation into what they believed was a clear case of foul play. As the initial investigation stalled, questions lingered about the role of the wrestling industry's influence, particularly that of Vince McMahon, the powerful head of the World Wrestling Federation. Rumors swirled about a mysterious meeting between McMahon, Snuka, and the district attorney's office, but no concrete evidence emerged to clarify McMahon's involvement or the reasons behind the investigation's apparent standstill. The lack of immediate legal action left the Argentino family devastated and seeking justice through civil means. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Snuka, which resulted in a $500,000 judgment in their favor. However, the victory was hollow, as Snuka filed for bankruptcy, and the family never received compensation. Snuka continued to work for free.
Hall of Fame wrestler has just been charged with the 1983 murder of his 23-year-old Brooklyn girlfriend, Nancy Argentino.
However, after 32 years in 2015, Snuka was charged with murder, yet he would never face trial as he claimed he had dementia. But that did not stop him from fighting in the same year he was charged. Jose Huertas Gonzalez.
This man, another wrestler named Jose Gonzalez, better known to fans as Invader 1, was arrested for the murder and awaits trial.
On the 16th of July, 1988, the stage was set for another wrestling event at the Juan Ramon Lubriel Stadium. The air was thick with excitement and the heat of the Puerto Rican sun as fans gathered to witness their heroes in action. Brody was scheduled to face Dan Spivey that night, a match that promised to be another notch in his storied career. But before he could lace up his boots and step into the ring, Brody's life would take a tragic turn. During a detailed interview featured in Vice's documentary series, Dark Side of the Ring, fellow wrestlers Dutch Mantle and Tony Atlas recounted events surrounding the altercation between Bruiser Brody and Jose Gonzalez in the 1970s. According to Mantell and Atlas, Brody wrestled roughly with Gonzalez during their matches, with Brody allegedly beating him up. S.D. Jones recalled Gonzalez expressing his resentment towards Brody, reportedly stating, "One day I'm gonna kill that man." Atlas further claimed that local authorities initially assumed the killer to be an enraged wrestling fan, unaware of Gonzalez's involvement. Atlas mentioned that he was the sole witness to identify Gonzalez to the authorities for his arrest. Atlas also said that Brody was on the verge of acquiring ownership in the wrestling company, suggesting potential changes that might lead to Gonzalez's dismissal. Atlas recalled an urgent meeting among Gonzalez, Victor Quinones, and Carlos Colon in the locker room shortly before the tragic events, while Mantell described the meeting as strange. Moments later, Gonzalez called out to Brody in the shower, leading to the fatal stabbing. As the two men disappeared from view, the rest of the wrestlers continued their preparations, oblivious to the impending tragedy. The exact words exchanged between Gonzalez and Brody remain a mystery, but what is known is that the discussion quickly spiraled into a heated argument. The locker room's layout, a labyrinth of lockers and secluded spaces, meant that the initial moments of the altercation were hidden from view, but the outcome was anything but silent.
As I'm looking at Carlos, I hear this sound. So I looked up. Brody was halfway hunched over. I thought Jose punched him in the stomach. That's what I thought. That the first thought came to me, damn, he hit Brody. I said, oh, this is gonna be a fight.
Bruiser Brody was bent over, clutching his stomach, his face contorted in pain. Standing nearby with a knife dripping blood was Gonzalez, his expression one of shock and confusion. The immediate response was one of chaos and disbelief. Wrestlers and staff scrambled to make sense of the situation, some rushing to aid Brody, others calling for help. The locker room, once filled with the sounds of camaraderie and competition, was now a place of panic and fear. Brody, despite his formidable size and strength, was vulnerable, his lifeblood spilling onto the cold tile floor. The urgency of the situation was compounded by the logistical nightmare that ensued. The stadium, packed with fans eagerly awaiting the night's entertainment, was surrounded by the snarl of traffic, the streets choked with vehicles. It took almost an hour for paramedics to navigate the congested roads and reach the stricken wrestler. Every second was precious, and as the clock ticked, Brody's chances of survival diminished. When the paramedics finally arrived, they were met with a daunting challenge. Brody's massive frame, now limp and heavy, was beyond their ability to move. It was Tony Atlas who stepped in to assist in carrying Brody's body down the stairs to the waiting ambulance. The Great Khali. The date was May 28, 2001, a day that would be etched in wrestling history for all the wrong reasons. The APW boot camp was in full swing, with trainees pushing their limits, and among them were the great Khali and Brian Ong. They were practicing a move known as the spine buster, a maneuver that requires the recipient to trust their partner completely as they are lifted and slammed onto the mat. During one fateful practice, the execution went awry. Brian Ong, perhaps in a moment of instinct or error, clutched at Khali's shirt. This unexpected action altered the dynamics of the move. Ong's tailbone struck the mat first, causing his head to whip back with violent force. The impact was catastrophic. Brian collapsed, and the training session was thrown into chaos. Despite being rushed to the hospital, the injuries proved fatal, and Brian Ong's promising journey in wrestling was cut short. The aftermath of the accident was a whirlwind of emotion and legal proceedings. Brian Ong's family, devastated by their loss, sought answers and justice. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Roland Alexander, the owner of All Pro Wrestling, and the APW boot camp. The lawsuit claimed that the organization had been negligent in its duty to protect Brian, especially since he had suffered a concussion just weeks before the fatal incident. The court proceedings revealed that Brian had been allowed to return to training after only 2 days, a decision that would come under intense scrutiny. Tony Jones claimed that Khali was very sorry for the accident.
Yeah, and I know I talked to Khali about it, and he was sorry. It was just a very unfortunate accident.
An unfortunate accident? You know what's an unfortunate accident? Me hitting my pinky toe while shuffling through my room. But okay, Tony, let's call it that. The Ong family's pursuit of justice culminated in a court ruling in their favor, with a substantial settlement of $1.3 to $2 million in damages. The payment was covered by APW's liability insurance, but no amount could compensate for the loss of a loved one. Billy Jack Haynes.
A former WWE star was in court and has been arraigned in the shooting death of his 85-year-old wife.
In a turn of events as dramatic as any wrestling storyline, Billy Jack Haynes found himself at the center of a real-life tragedy. On a cold February morning in 2024, the once celebrated wrestler was arrested in Portland, Oregon, following a harrowing standoff with police. The authorities had responded to a report of a shooting in the Lentz neighborhood, and upon arrival, they encountered a scene that would shock the community. Inside the home, Haynes was uncooperative, leading to tense negotiations with law enforcement. The standoff culminated in his arrest and the subsequent discovery of his wife, Jeanette B. Kraft, deceased. At 70 years of age, Haynes was a far cry from the vibrant athlete who once dominated the wrestling ring. His wife, 85, had been battling dementia, and neighbors spoke of the couple's recent struggles. The news of Haynes' arrest sent ripples through the wrestling world and beyond. Fans who had once cheered for his victories in the ring were now grappling with the stark reality of his situation. The Portland Police Bureau reported that Haynes was taken to a hospital for a medical condition unrelated to the incident, delaying his formal booking and charges. B. Kraft was not only the mother of another professional wrestler who went by the name Todd Rule, but also his real name was Todd B. Kraft. Rule and Haynes formed a strong friendship from childhood, meeting in the wrestling world at the age of 9. Following Rule's father's passing, his mother tied the knot with Haynes. Rule passed away in 2021. Kim B. Kraft Finley shared a heartfelt tribute to her mother on Facebook, writing, "You are now soaring with the angels." Neighbors also expressed their shock and sorrow over the tragedy. One neighbor mentioned how they used to reminisce about old wrestling days with Haynes, recalling, "He would share all sorts of stories about the old wrestling scene, and I would tell him about how I used to watch him." Another neighbor, Berlin Mathieu, shared her deep sense of loss, saying,
"A great community around here, a lot of veterans that are in my dad's bed as well, and so was Billy, and I did love him dearly, and we loved Jen as well, so yeah, but yeah, this, like I said, it's a tragedy all around."
Scott Hall.
A guy pulled a gun on me, and I took it away from him and shot him, point blank.
In the world of professional wrestling, few figures have cast as long and as complicated a shadow as Scott Hall, known to many as Razor Ramon. His journey through the glitz and glamour of the squared circle was marked by soaring highs and devastating lows. Hall's life was a cocktail of fame, struggle, and redemption, a story that intertwines with the very fabric of wrestling history. But beneath the swagger of the bad guy persona lay a tumultuous reality, one that reached a chilling climax one fateful night outside a nightclub. It was there that Hall, confronted with a life-or-death struggle, took a man's life with the man's firearm. This is the story of Scott Hall, a man who lived in the spotlight but faced darkness when the cameras turned away. In the dead of night, outside a bustling nightclub, a chilling encounter unfolded that would forever mark the life of Scott Hall, known to the world as Razor Ramon. The year was 1983, and the air was thick with tension when Hall found himself in the grip of a heated altercation.
Of course it was over a girl. He smashed all the windshields out of my car. And I I walked outside, and the security guard was there, who watches the cars. I said, where is he? He's around the corner talking to the manager, who was my friend.
The confrontation spiraled out of control, and in a harrowing twist of fate, the man Hall was scuffling withdrew a gun. In the ensuing struggle, the firearm discharged, and the man was fatally wounded by his weapon. This was no scripted wrestling match. It was a grim slice of reality that would haunt Hall for years to come. The incident was shrouded in controversy and legal battles. Hall was charged with second-degree murder, a charge that loomed over him like a dark cloud. However, the case took a turn when key evidence surfaced, showing that Hall had acted in self-defense. The charges were eventually dropped, but the shadow of that night lingered.
I should have sought counseling like right then, but I didn't know anything. I was a kid.
Brian McGee.
Much more about a former pro wrestler arrested on first-degree murder charges. As we broke first on ABC Action News this morning, deputies say he stabbed his girlfriend to death in the parking lot of a Tampa apartment complex.
On that fateful day, the police received a call that would lead to a shocking discovery. A woman was found with multiple stab wounds. The perpetrator was none other than Brian McGee, a man known to many as a wrestling entertainer, not a violent criminal. The details that emerged painted a picture of a sudden and brutal attack that left the victim fighting for her life. The lead up to the stabbing was murky, with few details available to the public. What was known was that McGee and the woman were acquainted. She was his, and the altercation took place at Del Lago Apartments in Tampa.
I seen the dude come back, got on top of her and just started stabbing.
According to the deputies, there was an argument. The victim had previously dated the pro wrestler, but the relationship ended about a year ago. As the news broke, fans and fellow wrestlers alike were left in disbelief. How could the future, a man who had once been a symbol of potential greatness in the wrestling world, be involved in such a heinous act? The wrestling community reeled from the news, struggling to reconcile the character they knew from the ring with the man accused of such violence. The immediate aftermath of the stabbing was chaotic. McGee, realizing the gravity of his actions, fled the scene, leading the police on a high-speed chase that would add to the already sensational nature of the incident. The pursuit was relentless, with law enforcement determined to apprehend McGee before he could cause any more harm. As the chase unfolded, it became clear that McGee was not going to give up easily. The former wrestler led police on a dangerous pursuit, weaving through traffic and putting countless lives at risk. The tension was palpable, with every turn and acceleration bringing the situation closer to a potentially tragic end. Eventually, the chase came to a dramatic conclusion when McGee's vehicle crashed. With nowhere left to run, he was taken into custody, the reality of his situation setting in. The man who had once entertained crowds was now the subject of a different kind of attention, one that was far from adulatory. But the story brought a new twist as shortly after, he was transferred to a mental health facility. In the wake of the arrest, the wrestling community and the public grappled with the news. Social media was abuzz with speculation and disbelief. How had things gone so wrong for Brian McGee? What had led to this moment of violence? The questions were many, but the answers were few. Chris Adams. In April of 2000, the precarious balance of Adams' life tipped into tragedy. Linda Kapengst, a young woman with whom Adams had become romantically involved, fell victim to the lethal combination of alcohol and GHB. The two had indulged in a night of excess that ended with both slipping into a coma-like state. While Adams would eventually recover, Kapengst would not. She was pronounced brain dead at the hospital, a heartbreaking outcome that left her family devastated and Adams facing a grim reality. The incident marked a turning point for Adams. Once a celebrated athlete, he now found himself at the center of a manslaughter investigation. The wrestling community, which had embraced him as a star, began to distance itself. His upcoming appearances were canceled, and his name became synonymous with the tragic event that had claimed Kapengst's life. Adams and Kapengst's bond was complex, intertwined with a shared dependency on substances that promised escape but delivered peril. GHB, the drug du jour, had become a staple in their lives, offering a reprieve from their troubles. Known for its sedative effects, GHB was especially dangerous when mixed with alcohol, a fact that would prove to be of critical importance in the narrative of their relationship. The night of April 2000 was a culmination of their reckless indulgence. Adams and Kapengst, along with a friend, found themselves in a situation that would soon spiral out of control. The trio consumed copious amounts of alcohol, and GHB was also part of the toxic cocktail that evening. As the substances took hold, both Adams and Kapengst succumbed to a coma-like state, a terrifying side effect of the drugs they had ingested. Their friend, witnessing the alarming effects of the overdose, made the crucial decision to call for medical assistance. It was a decision that likely saved Adams's life, but tragically came too late for Kapengst. By the time help arrived, the damage was done. Adams would eventually awaken from the drug-induced stupor, but Kapengst's fate was sealed. At the hospital, she was declared brain dead. In June 2001, Adams was indicted on manslaughter charges in connection with the death of Kapengst. He surrendered himself to authorities. However, while awaiting trial, tragedy struck on October 7, 2001, when he was fatally shot in the chest with a .38 caliber handgun during a drunken altercation with his friend, William Brent Bourret Parnell, at his residence in Waxahachie, Texas. Adams was 46 years old at the time of his death. Parnell argued self-defense and was subsequently acquitted of all charges. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.